Thanks very much, Mary and Tim, who in absentia, for inviting me down to speak to you this evening. Obviously on borders, and my area is crime and security. That's my expertise. So I'll be looking at, and it will be superficial because this is such an in-depth area, but a superficial coverage of issues, the implications for the UK. I haven't got a crystal ball. I can't tell you what it exactly will be like, but we can imagine on how things are going. Okay, just so you know a bit about my background. I'm a retired police officer. I know you're thinking, looks too young to be a pensioner. We do retire young. But I do have CID experience, including some counter-terrorism, hence the reason why I've got that interest in this area. For 10 years as a principal lecturer at Liverpool John Moores University Law School. So I actually taught, surprise, criminal law. I have my own modules on crime and security. I also actually taught EU law as well. There were some bad points I had to teach George, but I got over that and got a doctor's note. Currently I'm a research fellow at Leeds Beckett, so it's good to know freedom of movement of people still exists between Lancashire and Yorkshire. You don't need a visa yet. I also run my own consultancy firm providing expert witness work and advice on law and policy in areas of my research, which is security and terrorism, criminal law and policing. So that's my expertise. Yeah, you might have seen me on the telly once or twice or heard me on the radio and all the rest of it, because it's quite nice when you sort of get asked to go on there. But you know, it's they asked me for that too. Okay, I'm going to look at what we've got, and I'm going to race through some of these things. So I picked a few examples. Europol. If you've not heard of Europol, this is the EU's policing agency. It's not an operational agency, so forget those dramas. They don't have detectives who go out solving crime. Europol is a facility, predominantly intelligence facility, but does more than that. It's a conduit for policing agencies throughout the 28 member states, soon to be possibly 27, because you never know, get another referendum. Oh, by the way, I'll straight cough, I did vote Remain, just in case you're wondering. George did say, wind them up and tell them I was Nigel Farage's scriptwriter, but that is not true. So I did vote Remain. We may get a second referendum, I don't know. But yep, Europol. One of the biggest successes of the EU. This was brought in with the Treaty of Union, under the Treaty of Union, the Maastricht Treaty, originally to deal with drugs, but they realised there's more than just drug trafficking as a problem within Europe. People trafficking, firearms trafficking, I'm not going to go through the list of all the crimes, but you can imagine, and of course terrorism. An issue which over the last 5 years or so has been a problem throughout the whole of Europe, especially in the EU countries. Its main aim, mutual cooperation, to support cooperation. So they will look at, so let's say I'm in the UK and I'm looking at George Lamb, okay, who is a major trafficker of drugs. He's not, I'm making this up, but in case you're wondering, in case George is. But also, the Carabinieri are doing an investigation into drug trafficking. Now, they may have one of their suspects, but they also spotted George Lamb, which also, Holland is also running an investigation into drugs trafficking. They may have two of their Dutch nationals, but George Lamb crops up. Europol goes, do you realise you three are looking at the same person? We can help you. So it speeds up investigations. It has cooperation. If you ask me, it's one of the best things to come out of the EU. And I'm going to be a bit like Aidan. It did remind me of the life of Brian, what's the Romans ever done for us? And I have done that in an EU lecture. We actually did run, I think with my colleague, what's the EU ever done for you? This is pre-referendum. But yeah, this is one of the best things that's come out of it. And up to the early 2018, the director was Sir Rob Wainwright from the UK. And I think he did a great job. He shook it up, he's made it into the agency it is now, and my fingers crossed that it'll just keep developing in a positive way. Right. Schengen Information System. Okay, UK is not in Schengen. And another confession by me. Yeah, I'm pro-EU, I voted Remain. I'm a little bit like the UK membership though. You know, that second cousin who goes to a family event who sort of like certain things, but I don't want that, but I like this. And you don't really not quite part of the family, but is part of the family, if you get my meaning. There are things about the EU I have issues with. Democratic deficit. I have issues with unelected bureaucrats telling us what to do. I have issues with that. Donald Tusk, I'm sorry, I didn't vote for you. I didn't have a chance. But the European Parliament, post-2009, is more democratic than ever. So we're not in Schengen in the UK. We've kept our borders, but we're in the Schengen acquis. We're part of, we've taken the bits of Schengen we like. We like the crime bit. So here's issues in the Schengen information system too. They're obvious. One person's wanted for arrest. It makes sense. Because criminals and terrorists do not recognise borders. They go, I'm going to go from here and I'm going to escape and I'm going to go to Naples. Oh no, I won't, because Liverpool's playing, be full of Norwegians, so I'm going to go off to Germany. They don't recognise borders. They travel. And as we heard earlier, borders were created many years ago, so this is one of the great things about Europol and information systems and intelligence systems. Those ones are for Europe, that EAW, that's a European arrest warrant. Talk about that in a second. Third country nationals be refused entry. Okay, we don't really play too much of a part of that because we've maintained our own border. Missing persons, that's vital. Vulnerable people. Again, there's no borders on this. We travel. So you can see there, they're all pretty obvious, even down to objects lost, misappropriated, and so on. So there are benefits to that. Terrorism, this is Sir Rob Wainwright's work, really. There was the Internet Referral Unit that was looking at to combat terrorist propaganda. We saw how influential Daesh, Islamic State, ISIL, ISIS, whatever you want to call them, were one of the. If you look at terrorism, they are the textbook writers of how to use media, mainstream and social media to their advantage. Absolutely textbook stuff. They manage throughout the world to recruit people to their cause and still do today. They've not gone away. I sound a bit like Jerry Adams' Post-Good Friday Agreement when the real IRA started. But they've not gone away. Okay, they've not. They were looking at that. And of course, this is an issue. This is an issue because it's influencing individuals. Okay, we're looking at violent extremist activity. I'm not going to go on the prevent. Don't worry, I'm not going to go on a tangent. But it is an issue for all forms of extremism, far-right, Islamist, whatever it is, it's an issue there. But that changed a couple of years ago. European Counter-Terrorism Centre tracked foreign fighters. Go back to Islamic State again. They recruited all over the world. It's not known the exact number from the UK, but up to 2,000. France, even more. And per head of population, if you look at it that way, Belgium was the highest. Okay? Belgium was the highest in numbers per head of population, if you want to put that perspective in. But it's not been there. Canada, Australia, US, other parts of the world, they have fighters, so it's tracking them. Now they're trying to get back, and that's a danger. Sharing intelligence and expertise, because on terrorism financing, banking now knows no boundaries. It's global. We go to our local HSBC up the road. By the way, it's the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation. The clue is in the name. These are global entities. They know no boundaries. Monitoring terrorist propaganda, so that work has gone in there. Illegals, firearms, trafficking and explosives. Obvious reasons. If you're a terrorist and you want to carry out an attack, apart from using vehicles, etc., explosives and firearms are very useful. And international cooperation. I'll say it again, international cooperation. Working together. And working together makes you stronger. The UK is one of the biggest users of Europol and has been. It's made us stronger. We share systems. We share how we operate. We look at good practice and what didn't go so well. Bad practice. We don't like to say that. And improve it. Improve what's going on. Hopefully I've sold Europol to you now. European arrest warrant. Have a guess who's one of the biggest, I suppose the clue is because I'm here. Have a guess who's one of the biggest users of the European arrest warrant? The UK. The UK. We love it. We love it. We are one of the biggest users. What is it, in case you've heard about it? It's a quick form of extradition. It can take 7 days. Or, if you go through extradition treaties prior to 3 years, there's one advantage. 32 offences are covered from it, mainly all serious offences, as you can imagine. So, yeah, I put the examples there. Trafficking, all trafficking type offences, murder, child pornography, and obviously terrorism. We've used it to our advantage. We also do it the other way. Julian Assange, it was Sweden, said, we want him arrested for rape and for sexual offences. Julian Assange said, oh, I'm off to Ecuadorian consulate. I think he's still in there. He can't step out, because the moment he steps out, I think he'll be arrested, but the warrant has now passed. I think it'll be extradition to the States. That's what he doesn't want. He feared he'd go to Sweden, Sweden would deal with him, and then he'd go. But I mean, I have my own views on that now. That's not for here. But it is. There was Forrest, the teacher, who took a young schoolgirl to France. You might remember that a few years ago. European arrest warrant came out. The gendarmerie found his location, arrested him, and sent the girl back to the family. All done in 7 days. Brilliant. European arrest warrants. Oh, so hopefully I've sold to you. It's a shame we're here. How it operates, as I said, they can arrest a suspect from one member state. They will then send it to the member state where they think they are, or member states where they think they are. When the person's arrested, they inform the existence of the warrant, and they have a right to legal advice. So, you know, it's not just a straight lift. Because one thing I've found when I've spoken, certainly in Europe, and perhaps I'm a bit too anglicised in a way, there was issues where I was talking about intelligence sharing and so on, and there were members from Eastern European states, and of course it's within living memory, well, within mine, because I'm old, living memory of state police and so on, and despotic regimes. So they have a fear of that. But you know, you look at what's happened. We talk about legal advice, right to fair trial. It's in the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms from the EU and the European Convention on Human Rights. It's in there. And they can go back, or they can fight it in the court where they've been arrested, and that will be examined on there. Okay, EU Passenger Name Record Data Directive. You might not have heard of this one. Came in 2016. Look who introduced it. The UK. Because we love data. We love collecting information on people. Now, why was it brought in? The US liked this, obviously. They wanted it. It had a big fight. They tried a couple of times to get this through. The last one, the UK tried and pushed this through, but so long as there were sufficient safeguards on personal data protection, privacy and so on, it's about what's the difference between that and your normal information? When you go and buy your ticket on credit card, they know the credit card. They know the company, they know where you bought it, they know who bought it, because I could buy it for you. They know your details, they'll know my details. They can't look at everybody, but it's important when those lists come to either the border agency or to special branch here in the port units and similar organisations. They look at who's flying. And if someone crops up on one of the intelligence systems, that's useful. That is useful. It'd be great, I think, if we could have you're going to love me for this, you won't. Trains, that's just as vulnerable. Ferries are just as vulnerable. So I think we should widen it if you've got the safeguards. But it's EU law, and we love it in the UK. So we've still got that. Okay. Recent terrorist attacks in Europe? Lots. I missed Stockholm. I missed a lot. Just a quick summary. We all remember Paris 2015. I remember it because it was the day Mwazi was killed. Remember Jihadi John? I did a load of media interviews that day from about 7 in the morning, and it was about 9 o'clock at night. I quite remember it. I put my feet up. I was absolutely shattered. And the phone rings. I thought, oh, no, another one. I know you shouldn't. You go, oh, great. Here's the media again. And I said, oh, what is it? He said, it was the BBC. Are you looking at the news? Are you aware what's going on in Paris? So you do a quick change from the soap operas that your wife wants to watch straight over to BBC News Channel. Big attack. We all know about that one. Berlin. This followed Nice, but we start to see the use of vehicles. Westminster Bridge. I mentioned that one because the Collins inquest is finishing today. So that's why I picked that one out of the 2017. The better planned one was actually London Bridge, Borough Market, with Karam Bus and so on. And that's one there. Barcelona. And I picked EU countries. As I said, the Stockholm, there's that many that we've had. And we cooperate. Things we learned from Paris. The security services don't really speak to the police. And even then, there's departments that they don't really speak to each other. What's happened since? The UK, through Europol and the negotiations, said, well, we learnt that in 2005, and guess what? We actually talk to each other. We've set up a joint terrorism analysis centre. We've set this up. Why don't you follow this model? France is now trying to follow that model. It's called cooperation, working together to make us all safe. That's what this is all about. Brexit negotiations and crime security. There's Michael Barnier going on. Came out couple of June it was, and speaks to diplomats in Vienna. And he said we need to cooperate on a different basis. He says, the challenge in itself, the UK's decided to leave the EU. By the way, when people say the UK's leaving Europe, I do point out we're in Europe. We're leaving the EU. I went on a trip to Iceland recently, and they take across that plate from US to Europe. Because, and for the British, you're going into Europe. I said, well, we've always remained in Europe. We always will be in Europe, geographically. It's a continent. But we're leaving its institutions, structures and so on. It'll be a third country outside the EU's legal order, which is what non-EU states are. Canada is a third country. Australia is a third country. Not a third-rate country. Please differentiate between that. So, what's he saying? UK's police and intelligence agencies will be frozen out of European arrest warrant initiative and other aspects, intelligence systems concerning criminal justice databases. Well, I got interviewed by RT, which is Putin's channel. I'm always familiar with them because I wait for the question, is this not a failing of Western political decadence? I wait for that question to come in. But I got interviewed, and the Daily Express picked it up. And the Daily Express rang me, and this was the headline: EU's biggest loser, terror expert dismantles Barnier security threats, blah, blah, blah. I went on a bit of a rant. I'll hold my hand up. I was a bit miffed. I'm thinking, hang on a minute. Trade, exchange of goods, tariffs, great. But you get to crime and security, this is people's lives we're talking about. We're still in Europe. I just told you, criminals and terrorists know no boundaries. We need to work together. Surely this should not be on the negotiating table. It should not be there. But it is. Barnier's brought it up on the negotiating table. I couldn't get my head around it. I really was miffed. So they caught me on the hop. They picked it up. But I'm still angry at the fact that EU would want to do this to Britain. I have a view. I might be wrong. But the EU is worried. There's been a lot of movement throughout many states. Geert Wilders has got 25% of the seats in the Dutch Parliament. Who thought Marine Le Pen would be running across alongside Macron? Alternative for Germany, 92 or 94 seats in the federal government. Hungary, it's got a right-wing government. Austria, Italy's not happy. There's rumblings going on. Maybe in these negotiations they're trying to set an example with the UK and make us pay for this. But I think at the end of the day, all will be well that ends well. What will we lose? Well, no officers will be automatically liaison officers in Europe. I accept that. You're not going to get directed. But there are FBI officers actually in Europol, and there are Europol officers over in Washington at the Hoover Building. I think that could work for us. We could work together. Okay, we won't have a European arrest warrant, but I'm sure we can come up with a variation of it. Because as I said, we're so close. Criminals, terrorists know no boundaries. So surely we're going to come up with it. Because it's to the benefit of the EU, not just us. It's a benefit both ways. We won't have direct access to the intelligence systems, so I'm sure there'll be an agreement for limited ones. Okay, I'm sure there'll be an agreement. I'm always positive. I'm never Tony, I'm always optimistic. Lack of direct police and judicial cooperation. Maybe initially, but we're going to have to work together. The passport nations, Nordic passport nations like Norway, are in the Schengen Acquis. Why can't we be in it? This is not about trade. This is not about all these others. It's about people's lives. And I'm sure at the end of the day, an agreement will be made. And as Julian King said, look, come on, and he makes that point. These people don't know boundaries. They really don't know boundaries. I'm sure after March, there'll be a shared interest, because we have that shared interest. What's the issues? Why are the EU concerned? Well, they think the Court of Justice of the European Union, or European Court of Justice, whatever you want to call it, it's the only competent jurisdiction. Well, actually, not quite right. I have taught EU law, and member states' courts can act as European courts of justice of the European Union on matters of EU law. And I'm a member of the Inner Temple. That's not a Masonic order, by the way. It's one of the four rings of court. It speaks a lot of judges. They are very familiar with EU law. They're quite used to interpreting EU law because that's what it is about. You can't always go to the Court of Justice of the European Union. You can imagine the backlog. Domestic courts in member states also act as European Union courts on matters of EU law. So that's not quite right. There's a fear by the EU we'll leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Who wrote the European Convention on Human Rights? Does anybody know? The UK. Who formed the Council of Europe? Who was the major politician? Don't tell Boris Johnson this, it'll upset him. Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill saw the way forward in Europe was working together. In fact, it was British lawyers, UK lawyers, who predominantly wrote the European Convention on Human Rights. We had rights to accession in 1966 as citizens. I remember it because it was a great year for football. And don't worry, I'm not going to mention the World Cup. It was the FA Cup final. Everton was 2-0 down with half an hour to go. And it was a great comeback. 2 goals by Mike Bilko and Derek Temple. We won 3-2. That's how I remember it. It was a great year for football. I think England won something as well. I'm not sure. Yeah, but we rose it. I don't think we're going to be leaving this tomorrow. So I'm sorry, Michael Barnier, I don't think we're going to be leaving this as soon as we go. The Tories can talk about it, but there'll be a groundswell on this. We will not leave it. I am confident of that. Sorry?
They've stated that they want to leave the European.
Certain Tories have. A lot of Tories won't let it happen. Adequacy of EU data protection standards. Oh, come on. You are joking. Hang on. I'll click the right one. What's happening there? Well, the next slide does show the GDPR. UK's data protection laws are EU data protection laws. Yeah, GDPR. I'm sure you all were thrilled when you got all those emails. Would you like to keep accepting our terms and conditions and blah, 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 read all small print. Yeah, that came in. But there's also a directive to deal with crime and terrorism as well. It came alongside that, giving access. They're what called limited rights. There is still a limitation where that can be in areas of crime and terrorism on certain conditions. Okay, so there can be interference. I do have an issue. I did a case for the High Court in Ireland on a murder case, and it was interesting. He thought he got away with it for 12 months, but key evidence was telecoms data, cell site data, all this, under the 2011 Irish Data Retention Act. And the question, what the appeal was on and the defence was raising, this violated EU law. I do think the EU is a little bit too tight on data protection. You've got to give the police, in particular, a certain degree of access to certain data for a certain time. So long as the safeguards are there, for me it's judicial scrutiny and so on. I think you do need to have that there. So, borders. One thing you've not looked at, and I looked at terrorism, and it's an issue I've been writing about and researching lately, the Irish border. I listened to Nigel Farage yesterday. I saw a little clip. Who thought about the Irish border pre-referendum? Who thought about the Irish border during the campaign, the referendum? We didn't really, did we? But there's an undercurrent going on. There's an undercurrent going on in the north at the moment. It is a big concern. If you like, I have friends and family in the Strabane area, in Tyrone. It's great because let's say we're in Strabane now, and if we just walk up the hill, perhaps by Lord Street, there's Lifford in County Donegal. You look at the Garda station in Donegal, in Lifford, it looks like an English police station. You go to the police station in Strabane, it's still got the watchtowers and all the rest of it. You go to the court in Letterkenny, just a bit further down the road, it looks like our court. You go to the court in Strabane, it's got all the watchtowers and so on. That's an issue, and a lot of people there are concerned But you can cross freely, it's great. You can walk across it, you can drive across it. You go from miles per hour to kilometres per hour, and vice versa. It's brilliant. You can travel around Ireland. But people are concerned about a hard border, and of course, what's happening is, certainly on the Republican side, there are certain groups there who are making hay of this and saying, look, we're going to put a border up. Here's partitionist politics. It's all back. It's never quite gone away. Now, I'm going to quote Jerry Adams. The IRA have not gone away. There's the new IRA. The UVF and the UFF and Red Hand Defenders, they've not gone away. There's still sectarian violence happening in the north, but we don't get it this side the Irish Sea. I don't know why. It's still a danger. A hard border, and if it's not resolved, will just be feeding into the hands of these extremists. And the other factor is the ambivalence by this current UK government towards the north. They picked Karen Bradley, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, said, I'm absolutely thrilled and honoured, but I know little about Northern Ireland. How would you feel if you lived in Derry, in Belfast, in Omagh, and so on? Oh, we've got a secretary, they don't care about us. The investment into the infrastructure, it's not really there. We need someone not to be ambivalent about it or ignore it, to get investing and sort out this border issue in Ireland. That is a key border issue, the first one to sort out. But if I'm a crystal ball, I was interviewed by Mick Coyle's show on City Talk, and I always try and bring a Brexit story in. I mean, I used to say before, I said, there's millions of reasons why Scousers should vote Remain. It's the funding. If you go around, and there's another one, Aidan, where's Aidan gone? There's another one I found in Hope Street on there, and they are still around. And I said, those are the reasons to vote Remain. It makes sense, and of course it was a 60-40 split roughly here. So, you know, I did say at the time, I put my tweet, let's become the Singapore of the North, let's break away from the UK and become a city-state. I was joking at first, then I realised, actually, it's not a bad idea.
It's a very good idea.
Yeah. But, you know, I've been looking at this issue, and I've been talking about this, and if I have a crystal ball, I said, look, it's a bit like a Scouse wedding. You've got the two families, and they'll bicker and fight who's going to be doing what, where it's going to be, what you're going to have to eat, and all the rest of it, but the day goes brilliantly. I am an optimist. I think at the end of the day, common sense will take place. As regards trade, very briefly, I would say if you go from Junction 44 on the M6 down to London, how many British registration German, Italian, Spanish, French cars do you see? I don't think Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volkswagen, Audi, I've got to cover them all now because I've mentioned them. I don't think they're going to be pleased if there's going to be high trade tariff because we're a good market for a lot of European goods. I think businesses will start to come in. As regards my area, I am confident common sense will play a part. We won't have what we've got now, but we will have close relationship. It's only 22 miles, Le Manche, but that's the only French I know, apart from Allez-le-Bleu. The channel. It's so close. We're too close. We now have a tunnel. You can use a tunnel. I love it. I just love Eurostar. Give me that over the plane any day. It's great. I love it. We are close. But criminals and terrorists don't recognise borders. And we're on each other's doorstep. We're a high target. France is a high target. Belgium's a high target. Germany's a high target. Spain's a high target for terrorist activity. All 28 member states suffer people trafficking, child pornography, etc., etc. I think common sense will prevail at the end. We've got too much in common. Thank you very much.